I gotta admit, when you see a bad guy do the plank challenge from the Taser, it's kind of funny. Hi everyone, welcome to today's badge cam lesson here at Active Self-Protection. I'm your host, John Correa.
I'm your co-host, Mike Wilbur. Today's video comes to us from Longview, Washington.
Today's video brought to you by New Way Ford. New Way helps people all over the country find the right new or used car at the best price with incredible service. We bought Mrs. Asp's 2021 Bronco Sport from New Way, and I'm a satisfied customer. If you see me rolling in my New Way Ford F-150, come say hi and let New Way give you a quote on your next vehicle purchase. This started as a traffic stop, and officers have just heard from dispatch that the driver of the car that you can see here on camera is wanted for multiple warrants for violent felonies, armed robberies and assaults with a firearm and all kinds of stuff. So they're gonna wanna pull him out of that car. Let's listen in. We have two different angles here.
Hey, where are you going? Where are you going?
What's happening? Where are you going?
Cover now. Hey, get out the car! Hold on. Hey, turn around! Turn around! Stop! Stop!
Your fucking hands. That's not smart, man.
Here.
Well, you ran the police car.
Y'all are tripping. David Ford Taser deployed.
Sorry.
Hey! Get out of the car! Get out of the car! Hey! Turn around! Turn around! Turn around! Stop! Stop!
Give me your fucking hands. That's not smart, man.
Here.
Well, you ran the police car.
Y'all are sleeping. David Ford Taser deployed.
As you can see here, officers did recover a Glock 26 with a stendo in it in the car, as well as a whole bunch of paraphernalia that was indicative that he was involved in a fraud scheme. He's facing all of the charges related to his previous warrants as well. Thankfully, no officers were injured in this and no members of the public either. Hey, you know what? It is not too early for you to start thinking about joining Mike and I at the Active Self-Protection National Conference. Last full weekend in September, an entire 3 days of incredible conference-style training, all for a great cause, 100% for charity. So hit the link in the description and join us. Just off the jump here, Mike, officers have heard that this guy has multiple warrants, multiple violent felony warrants, and my guess is that he did as well. So I think this is a really good reason. Officers, hear me, a surveillance kit is not very expensive. You know, a lapel mic might run you 40, 50 bucks on Amazon. The surveillance kit might run you 50, 60 bucks, and that might be one of the best investments so that you don't end up letting him hear what's going on.
Yeah, I gotta say, if, as an department, I know we get some people in the department admin who watch these videos as well, who aren't necessarily street officers. If you're not providing your deputies, your officers, with a surveillance kit or at least a pork chop mic with an earpiece, you're doing them a great disservice. I always, as soon as they were available, I'm old, so I was around before they were a thing. But as soon as they were available, I always had one. I had it in my ear. If you're out in the field talking to a crook, the last thing you want him or her to hear is, yeah, he's got 3 felony warrants out of Alabama or whatever. That's not something you want them to hear, so I think a surveillance kit is key at all times when you're on patrol or out in the field.
I also want to say, I think that these three officers, all three officers that we see here, were professional, and they did a good job of getting this guy into custody. I've seen enough of these that go sideways that I love to see when it goes in an acceptable manner. Now let's think about some kind of, ideas here. I love the fact that the officers are getting out of the way and they're not putting themselves in the position where they have to use deadly force. So just somebody driving away in a car, we don't need to use deadly force to stop that unless there's some other circumstance that justifies deadly force. And I just want to commend these officers for recognizing that, for getting themselves out of the way and not getting into an unnecessary shooting.
Yeah, if I saw the tape correctly, John, there was an officer in that alley between where he took off from and ended up. If you're in that position, you should really be focusing, as a law enforcement officer, you should be focusing on getting the heck out of the way. even if you're able to get shots off accurately under those circumstances, you're going to be you're going to be shooting through a windshield. So John will tell you over and over again, hey, that rarely the rounds rarely go where you want them to go. They end up doing goofy stuff when they pass through the windshield. And second of all, if he's going any kind of speed and you're in that position, you're just not going to have time to disable that driver and for him to stop before you get hit. So your number one thing in that moment should be, let me get out of the way, find a way to get out of the way. Only if there's no other possible way of stopping this other than shooting at the car, should you shoot at the car, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. Now, Mike, I want to know what you think here about the officer diving headlong. I want to say I think that he's brave. I want to say I love his initiative. I just want to say I think this is super dangerous to the officer.
You've seen, I'm sure folks at home, you've seen a million videos where an officer gets dragged by a car. It is an extremely dangerous thing to have happen. I get, and I've said this before, John, I totally understand. You want to get in there, you want to get the bad guy, you want to stop him from doing what he's doing, from hurting anyone else. But, you know, I would advise against this sort of thing about jumping in the car. You have other options that you could try to disable him or disorient him or whatever. You know, it's an unpopular opinion in law enforcement circles, but man, I'm all about just give him a good douse of spray through that window and sit back and let it do its thing. He's not going to be going anywhere, probably.
Probably, right? And it's just, you know, again, if he tries to pull off here, your chances of getting stuck in that and dragged by the car, super huge. And of course, you got to think about your safety as well as your fellow officer's safety when they're trying to keep you from getting hurt. So, I mean, again, kudos for him, showing great initiative. Now, when our third officer gets the taser on, you know, it cracks me up, Mike, that it seems to me there's all this good grass. He's running in the grass. It looks like we got a dirt road behind us. And this guy finds the 1 square foot of pavement to plant his head on. And yet it is something that you got to be aware of, that a taser deployment that is successful, and I think this was a highly successful taser deployment, does have a high likelihood of causing a head injury. And you just got to be ready for that. And the juice has got to be worth the squeeze.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, look, the taser's very effective when it's effective, as we like to say. It's a Sex Panther of less lethal. You know, 60% of the time, it works every time. It worked perfectly here. I mean, this is a textbook, perfect case of taser deployment. He gets the probes in, they're just far enough apart, he's not wearing any baggy clothing, he's in close enough proximity to make it work, and he goes down like a log. Unfortunately, you know, we can't nerf the world. Somebody can get hurt if you pepper spray them and they could run into a wall. There's a million things. But with a taser, you have to bear in mind, almost every time, the person, if it works, the person's going to fall and they're going to schwack their head. So this guy was just having a bad day. I'm just imagining him going down and hitting his head while hearing all these women screaming in the background. It was one of his worst days of all time, I'm imagining.
I'd imagine it couldn't be any less. And then, you know, they got him into custody, didn't beat the tar out of him. You know, and I get it. You're upset at the moment. And he's like, hey, dude, bad decision. And you know what? I totally agree with the officer there. Hey, man, really bad decisions, because now you get hooked up with all the other stuff involved in it. Now, the officer who's in the car, I think we do want to talk about a couple of things here. He closes the door. I don't see him get his seatbelt on. Now he gets in, a head on. Okay, I get it. Now he gets this guy pushed aside, and now he draws a firearm on him. And I know some people are going to question that, Mike, but, you know, given the totality of the circumstances here, I don't really have a problem with the draw of the firearm.
Yeah, the drawing of the firearm's fine. Again, if he's shooting here, he's shooting through a windshield. So I want to reiterate as much as I can the idea that shooting through a windshield, shooting through any glass, but especially windshield glass, is suboptimal. I'd rather see him, I get it, this is just happening in the moment, and he wants to get a gun on the guy. I'd really rather see you get out and find a better position to be in, because right now, assuming he doesn't get out of the car, which he does, to his credit, if you don't get out of that car, we call it the casket. Basically, the car is a casket. You got to get out of that car. You can get to a position where you can have a little bit better cover and not have anything, glass or anything else for that matter, in between your gun and the bad guy should you have to shoot.
And listen, the bullet is going to deflect towards the perpendicular, but of course that windshield is curved, and it's curved in odd directions. And so predicting exactly where that bullet's going to go once it leaves windshield glass like that, your guess is as good as mine. And anybody who has shot significantly on the range through, out of or into cars knows that it definitely deflects. So I don't have a problem with him having a gun out, because, I mean, we're going to see in the end, the guy has a gun in the car and multiple violent felony warrants out for his arrest. Could have gone south in a big fat hurry. I'm really glad that guy decided, I'm not going to grab the gun, I'm going to try to run off. I think that may well have saved his life, or at least saved him getting shot multiple times. Now, of course, then what's going to happen is he's got to put the car in to park in order to get out of it. And so he's going to hand switch with the gun. And of course, if he'd done what you said, Mike, earlier, and put the car in park and jumped out and drawn the gun, this whole thing evaporates. And it worked out for him here, okay? But, you know, playing hot potato with your gun hand to hand in a stressful environment is just a recipe for disaster, so I don't recommend it.
Yeah, I mean, again, I don't want to give this guy too hard of a time. He did a great job in containing this and not letting it turn into a vehicle pursuit, which is, as we've seen, is dangerous for the public and for the officers. You know, there is a way to train transitioning a gun from your dominant hand to your non-dominant hand. I trained it a lot, where instead of just sort of flipping it over, you know, you're transitioning the gun over. However, I have to agree that ideally the gun stays in the holster until you get a chance to get out and get yourself in a better position. So that's the idea. You have a big old Safariland ALS holster, like John refers to it as a bucket. It's literally a bucket. It's the one kind of holster we wouldn't say you necessarily have to watch your gun go in. It's huge. It's right there. Just dump your gun in there, get out of the car, and then get to work.
And I think, you know, that's the difference in mission, makes differences in gear for officers and for private citizens. But I do think he does a really excellent job here as he comes up. I want to really say kudos here. Notice that he has his firearm is on his right side, that's his dominant side. His taser set up on his left side and set up to draw left-handed. That really decreases the likelihood of having a slip and capture error where you meant to draw the taser and you drew the firearm instead. I will say I continue to recommend that if you draw a taser, I recommend you look at the taser, point at the taser, and verify taser and verify verbally that's a taser before you use it. That will prevent that, I get, in a stressful environment, rapidly developing. Can be difficult. I think he did a great job here having it set up right for success.
Yeah, this is, again, one of those things that this is really important that you practice it till you can't possibly get it wrong. I like the idea of just taking a quick glance down at your left hand. This is a taser. It's not a gun. We've seen numerous times where it looks like officers thought they had a taser. They didn't. They had a gun and they shot someone in error. I've never seen one of those personally where I thought that was intentional or they were trying to get one in and shoot the guy, you know, without you know, probable reason or being in fear for their safety or whatever. In this case, I think these guys are obviously well trained. He took the second to put his gun away, get the taser out, and it was just in time. I mean, it couldn't have been any better timing as far as getting the taser out to stop this guy from getting away.
Yeah, I agree. I also like, you might have seen there that he dropped the taser to get the guy into custody. That's one of the few times I've ever seen an officer actually drop their taser, and I actually love it. And I know that in a lot of places they're taught, don't do that. Hey, I've got a guy that it's been a successful use. Let's get him into custody. We've got hands on him now. We got 3 of us. We don't need the taser anymore, so the quickest action is to drop the thing. We'll pick it up later. I don't mind that at all. I think these officers should be commended. I think that they got a violent guy off the streets. They did it without shooting him when they might have been able to justify doing so. Perfect deployment of the taser and good work covering their entire community's ass.